Whatever the social detriments that caused the domestic violence, they are shockingly and greatly multiplied to a mother and her children when a mother tries to remove herself and her children from a dangerous environment. Society very wrongly believes that if a mother takes the steps to remove herself and her children from this environment, that she would receive the help needed to protect and secure a safe, happy future for her children. This is horribly untrue and harshly learned by mothers internationally, who then receive multiplying, depreciating detriments beyond which much of society can fathom. Years ago, sitting in my kitchen with my 2-year-old beside me, watching my 6-year-old daughter and her friend dancing to classical music in their dress-up clothes, I would have never imagined my life to take such a devastating, unpredictable turn. In 2009, court proceedings began in which I lost custody of my children in 2010 to their abusive father. As being a mother was and is the greatest who I am, I truly felt I had woken on a different planet. The following will address the concerns of the growing epidemic of mothers losing custody in the United States of America and around the world. As I feel I lost my primary purpose wrongfully, I have realigned my purpose to include education in hopes of helping future generations, most especially my 2 granddaughters. Patrice Lenowitz, co-founder at Children's Justice Campaign and executive director of the Nurtured Parent Support Group, summarizes largely many of the feelings I have gone through and gives hope at the end of the day. She is an advocate that has given me hope and has helped me to confirm that the overwhelming feelings and trauma that I have received in the last 10 years are valid. Given the injustices received, they are worthy of recognition, and that I sadly am very far from being alone. In a TED Talk, Patrice explains that 58,000 mothers a year, last cited in 1998, are losing custody of their children and given to the abuser. She also explains how this creates an adverse effect on the children by sharing 2 studies, the ACEs study and the Saunders report. A quote from Patrice Lenowitz has become a coping skill that lifts me up daily, entitled The Organized Resistance Movement. As concerned American citizens, we are opposed to the status quo of exploiting victim, women, and children in a crisis through family court and child protective services. We are demanding transparency and accountability and a trauma-informed approach to ensure protection of the rights, safety, health, and well-being of our nation's women and children. She begins her TED Talk stating the fact that society believes that women in abusive relationships should take the necessary steps to protect herself and her children, and the courts will protect her and her children and her rights. But when she does this, she is not protected. She then leads into the ACEs, the Adverse Child Experience Study, which gives detailed information on how divorce and the loss of a hurting mother can cause adverse effects for a lifetime, to include decreased life expectancy. Following up with Saunders' report used to explain how domestic violence in a family needs to be re-evaluated in the courtroom, and the great need for those making the decisions in custody and evaluators to be trained in domestic violence. In addition to Patrice Lenowitz's efforts, Barry Goldstein, one of the leading domestic abuse advocates, is presently working on a bill, the Safe Child Act, introduced in 2016 in Hawaii, and calls for everyone, including custody cases, to have education and training in spotting domestic violence and child abuse. The Stop Abuse campaign works to prevent adverse childhood experiences and strongly fights for legislative change through the Safe Child Act. Probable causes for myself and other nurturing mothers to lose custody of their children are vast and overwhelming. There seems to be much talk on the Fatherhood Initiative program and the funding it provides other agencies. These are huge questions in the accountability of child protection services and how they are dangerously taking children from loving homes. There is widespread talk of corruption in family court and the profits that are received from the government funding from the Fathers' Rights Initiative. And I am overwhelmingly researching and educating myself to all of these possibilities. I do this to find closure and for myself and other mothers in same agony, and two, as a means to help educate others to the truth. It seems the answers lie in continual education to society, that there indeed is a huge problem with family courts, and two, that it is affecting children adversely, and then in turn affects society in a whole. It would be huge if mainstream media would join in this awareness, but little to no media is covering anything about the ills in society. It would be hopeful that federal investigations would take place to research what is going on in family court, and actions would take place to hold judges and professional counterparts accountable for the harms to children. This was indeed my most difficult life-changing experience. I would like to say I've learned and have found some peace through activism, but I can only say thank God I am still standing, and if somehow my voice can help another, then the pain would not be in vain, but instead have purpose. This is a valuable story of an ever-growing epidemic that multiplies social detriments for victims of domestic abuse. Databases of hard trauma and outcomes can be found online at the Women's Coalition and Mother's Revolution. Lives adversely changed, causing a mental health crisis, murders of women and children, as well as suicides of mothers and children who could not withstand the pain of such a traumatic life event. If mother and child can endure such hardships, many are left with mental health diagnosis, often to include PTSD and bipolar depression. Imagine the difficulty of losing a loved one and what is needed to grieve that loss. Now, imagine grieving a child that is not deceased. They are out there, but you have lost the right to daily mother them and kiss them goodnight. This is a very difficult thing for a person to have to do. Lastly, we are now beginning to see how these social detriments affect the present generation and to society as a whole. Change was needed 2 decades ago, and yet hope still remains. Thank you for your time.